Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Well, hello, everybody. This is our second time. Now, we've interviewed Dennis before. We've had our full-length interview with Dennis Henson, but we're interviewing Dennis over the next few weeks on his specific chapters of his new book, Real Impact, which you can see here. You can also see it next to Dennis's right shoulder there. And last week we talked about Sylvester Stallone. And this week we're going to talk about one of my heroes in the direct selling world, Mary Kay Ash. And, you know, Dennis, Mary Kay just was a remarkable human being, so far ahead of her time. And you did a great job capturing her kind of life story here. So let's talk about Mary Kay a little bit.
Sounds great.
First question. You know, she was obviously a very smart gal and graduated top of her class in high school.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as you very accurately said, went on to become the top salesperson at a book company when books used to be sold door to door way back. And what do you remember from, you know, that experience about her or her history?
The thing that really impressed me was that when she was a very young girl, 7 years old, her father became very ill and he was bedridden. So back then, women didn't work that much. They stayed at home and took care of the family. When that happened, Mary Kay's mother had to take a job just so they would have food. So she left Mary Kay in charge of the home, caring for her invalid father. She had to cook and clean the home. And she lived in Houston, or in a suburb of Houston, which was a big city. Even back then, it was close to the beginning of the 21st century. And she would have to get in a bus and go to downtown Houston and shop for clothes and for groceries and things. She was 7 years old. Isn't that amazing? And then in school, she was very intelligent. I mean, she graduated, as you said, she graduated at the top of her class, but they were very poor. So when all of her friends went off to college, she couldn't go. They just didn't have the tuition. So she got married and had children of her own. So one day, a knock came at the door and she went to the door and it was a book salesman. The lady had books for children, and she looked at those books and she just loved them. She wanted those books for her kids. She just wanted them so bad she could just feel it. Well, the lady recognized that. She was a good salesman, and she said, well, you really do want these books for your kids? And she said, oh, I would do anything for those. And she said, well, what if I just give them to you? And she said, what do you mean? She said, well, I'll leave these with you over the weekend. And the next week, if you can sell 10 sets of these books to your friends and relatives, I'll give you a set. And Mary Kay said, oh, really? Would you do that? So over the weekend, when the lady came back on Monday, she sat down and said, well, let's talk about this. And Mary Kay said, well, we don't need to talk. I've already sold all 10 sets. I wanted to know if I could get some more. So, of course, her talent was recognized, and the lady put her on and said, look, yeah. So for about a year, she went out and she just sold books to everybody she knew and people that she didn't know. But unfortunately, books were not a good resell thing. You know, you buy them one time and you didn't need them again unless they wrote another set, which didn't happen. So she really loved the marketing. She loved the money she was making and the freedom she had to stay home with her kids. And so she was looking, what can I find? And she discovered Stanley Home Products. And that's, she went to them and signed on. Of course, it wasn't hard to get on, but she really tried. She wanted to do that so much so that she got the money together to come to Dallas for one of their conventions. And while she was there, she saw them crown a lady the winner, you know, the grand salesman of the year, and they gave her awards. And Mary Kay looked at her and she said, that's going to be me next year. She liked that recognition. She thought, I'm going to get that next year. So she went up to the Queen and said, would you put on a show, a Stanley show for me? She convinced her to put on a show at the convention. And she took 18 pages of notes. And on a train ride home, she read those notes over and over and over until she internalized them. And then the following year, she was the Queen. And she became, well, back then, Stanley would let you bring other people on. Well, she brought so many other people on that, I mean, she moved way up in the company. And they decided, well, you need to be in Dallas. Unfortunately, when they wanted her to move to Dallas, they didn't want to continue to pay her residuals on her Houston team. You didn't think that was fair. So she just said, well, I'm not going to do that. And so she quit. She'd already moved to Dallas, but she just left the company. And that's when she found I think it's World Products, and went to work with them. I don't know how much further you want me to go on this story.
Well,
but
I want to make 2 points on that. One is that first woman was really, really smart, because by leaving those encyclopedias or whatever those books were, I'm assuming they were encyclopedias.
They were children's books.
Children's books. That by doing that, that's an old puppy dog close, right?
Yes.
You know, you leave a puppy dog at somebody's house. Oh, I'll pick the dog up in 2 days. You're not getting that dog back. You know, the kids are going to love it, and their parents are going to love it, and you know that dog is living there, right? I mean, that's old school selling, but it still works, frankly. But the other thing is the recognition. You know, it's funny that talking about Mary Kay, I had a distributor in one of my companies who actually at one time was with Mary Kay. He was actually the first male to ever win, maybe been the only one. I don't know. This is back in the 90s, I want to say, that he did this. But he was the first male to ever win the Queen for the year. They called him King for the year, obviously, when it was a male, winning that at Mary Kay. And I'll never forget what he said. You just said a key thing about recognition. He said to me, I'll never forget this. We went to lunch. We were in Vancouver, British Columbia. And there was another lady with me who had recruited him, who had also been with Mary Kay at one time. And we went to lunch. His name was Rob something or other. And he said, you know, and I was fairly young at the time. I was in my late 20s. He said, it doesn't take a lot to tell somebody that you care. At that time, he said a $10 piece of jewelry, which maybe today is a $25 piece of jewelry, he said, that recognizes their sales achievement. He said, that's what Mary Kay figured out. That was the secret sauce, was recognition at all of these different levels, not just the top person. Only one person can be the king or queen, obviously at a time, right? But there's a lot of sub-kings and queens and so forth that she recognized. And then what that did, that logic, the sales force started seeing that in their own people and saying, hey, you know, Susie over here, she sold X amount of product this month, you know, give her whatever. And maybe Susie's never been recognized. Maybe Susie's in a bad marriage. Maybe Susie's comes from a difficult childhood. Maybe Susie that doesn't have any of that. Maybe Susie's just never been slapped on the back before and told, hey, you did a great job. And that is what Mary Kay, one of Mary Kay's many contributions to the direct selling industry, that I see sometimes in companies that do it really well. And frankly, a lot of companies that could take a lot of lessons from Mary Kay because she did it so well. But I'll never forget that. And when you said recognition, you know, Mary Kay saw this other person achieve and get recognized. And she said, that's going to be me. And she made it happen. Well, how many little Mary Kays were there out there that did similar in her company, and some that left her company and went on other ventures, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, her influence is so big, but I want to make a point of that. But let's come back to that, Dennis. So she was with World Gifts. World Gifts made the mistake of not taking good care of Mary Kay, because World Gifts might be Mary Kay today if they hadn't. I don't know what happened to World Gifts. Stanley's still around. They're still certainly around. But when she began Mary Kay, she was going to run the sales and recruiting, and her husband was going to run the inside of the business, the nickels and dimes and the logistics and all that sort of thing. And unfortunately, he was a fairly young man, but he had a heart attack and passed away about a week or so before they began. And you bring that out in the book and mention it. But, think of that. We're talking 1963, long time ago. Women starting companies were rare. There were some, certainly, but not a lot. So here's Mary Kay. Husband passes away. Still had a young family on her end at that time. Still had her kids at home. And she decides to go forward anyway. And the original check, I don't remember the amount. I want to say it was $200. I might be wrong on that number. But at the Mary Kay Museum, which is here in Dallas, that you've been to and I've been to, right? And anybody that visits Dallas, you certainly should make it a trip, especially if you're in the direct selling industry or you want to be inspired by a great leader. But that check is there in the archives of that museum. And the fact that she started during such a difficult personal time in her life and said, well, we've gone this far. I think was her husband's name George?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Lord.
George
Yeah.
would have want me to go forward anyway. We've gone this far. We're going to go. And she chose to go anyway. And, here we are.
Right. She had planned to write a book. When she left World Gifts, she said, I'm going to write a book of all the things that the companies I worked for did right and all the things that they did wrong. And so that when new people sign up, they can read this book and they can avoid the mistakes and take advantage of the good things. So when she finished her book, she looked at it and realized this is not much of a book anyone would want to read. It's more of a sales manual. And that's when it hit her. Why don't I start a sales company? I can do this. I just don't understand the business part that much. And so she went to her husband, George, and he thought, well, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And they rented a small office space in Dallas, 500 square feet. And they were excited about it. She had a product that she'd been using for a number of years that a friend produced. And she went to her friend and purchased the right to market it was a face cream. So they had their product, they had their office, they knew what they were going to do. And a week before they were to open the door, George fell over with a heart attack and passed away. So she was devastated. She had everything she had was tied up in the inventory in the store. She went to her attorney, she went to her accountant, and they both said, you do not need to move forward. You'll go bankrupt. The business will go bankrupt. It'll bankrupt you. You'll have nothing. We just don't know what's going to happen to you. And so she was contemplating just letting it go when her son came to her. And back then, when I was a kid, I had a book that the bank gave me. It's a savings book, and they'd write in the book how much money you had in the bank. Then they would initially. You remember that?
Unfortunately, you're dating both of us, but I remember those little books. Yeah.
So he handed her his bank book, which had $4,500, his life savings. And he said, Mom, I would rather invest this with you than anybody I know. I know you can do this. And when he said that, it brought back a flood of memories of her mother saying, Mary Kay, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And that motivated her. And so he took over as the business manager, her son did, and she went to work selling. And she would stay late, come in early. She hired the new people, train them. She did a newsletter. If you could think of what to do, she did it. And she did it all herself. And in the first year, they actually made a profit. And then the second year, they made $1 million. So it really took off, and it turned into one of the greatest business stories of the 20th century. So it's an amazing story in the book, and it's an amazing real life story, because everybody that you talk with, like you and I were talking earlier, everybody that ever came in contact with a lady was extremely impressed. I mean, I told you a story about how wonderful she treated me. I was just somebody off the street that was asking for help, and she treated me like I was really important, and I wasn't. But she would teach her representatives that look for the sign. Everybody has a sign on them that says, "Make me feel important." And when I wrote that, I thought, that's really true. She really did that, and everybody at her organization did that. She did some really nice things for me just because I asked her to, and she didn't have to do them.
Well, why don't you tell that story a little bit? Because it's not in the book, but it's once again, it's who she was and how she treated people and why she's, here we are. I mean, Mary Kay's been gone at least 20 years, I think, maybe longer. And yet we're still talking about her. Her company's still extremely relevant, extremely successful. But her personally, she did something nice for you. And by the way, did you even know her, or you just kind of was at the cold call?
Didn't know her at all. Back in around 1991, I was writing a book on time management. I've always been interested in time management. In fact, if you go to YouTube, I have a time management course on YouTube. You can get it for free. Lots of the companies I work for had me manage the time management, but that's kind of out of the way. I was writing that, and I thought, I remember a story about the $25,000 idea, and it was on time management, and I've been using it for 25 or 30 years. I'm going to put that story in this book. I couldn't remember the details, so I went to the library in Farmers Branch. Yeah, I went to the Farmers Branch Library in Farmers Branch, Texas, and I said, "I'm looking for this story. Do you know which book it's in?" Because I'd always heard that you could ask the librarian, that'll help you. And the lady said, "I don't know which book it's in, but I know Mary Kay tells that story. You should ask her." And I thought, wow. So when I was driving back to my apartment, I realized that if I went up to the third floor of my apartment and looked out, I could see Mary Kay. I could see her business from the balcony there. And I thought, well, I'll just go and talk with her. Then I thought, maybe it'd be a better idea just to call showing up. So I called, and I was a kid, it was been a while ago. And I asked to speak with Mary Kay, and they said, "Well, why do you want to speak with her?" And I told them about the book and the story, and the lady said, "Yes, I recognize that story. Hold on for a minute." Then I was expecting her to come, but it wasn't her. It was her personal assistant. Well, at the time, I had no idea how important that personal assistant was. To me, it was just someone on the phone, and I told her what I needed, and she said, "Do you have a fax number?" And I said, "I do." I gave her my fax number, and about an hour, the fax started coming in. This is a pretty long story, and it was a handwritten story of the $25,000 idea signed by Mary Kay. Well, I wish I still had that, because now that would be worth a fortune. I mean, with her signature on it, but it was on that old fax paper that turned black after a few days anyway, so it would be black by now, but that was just so impressive. So when I was writing the story in this book, and I read about the sign, "Make me feel important," I thought, that's really true. Because she made me feel so important. Somebody that was the head of this major organization sat down and for 30 minutes wrote out in my hand, and signed it and faxed it to me. She didn't know me, never heard of me. Yeah, still hasn't ever heard of me, but she was just so good. She was just a kind-hearted person. And so when I wrote this story, it was with a lot of, feeling. I felt the story. And there's one part in the story that's in the book that's cathartic, that will actually make tears. Well, every time I read it, the tears come to my eyes. And that was one of the things I wanted in every story in the book. I wanted to reach into people's soul and pluck their heartstrings so that the book would motivate them to, want to be better. And I hope that does. I hope everybody will get it and read it. It's a wonderful story. She was a wonderful lady.
Certainly was, certainly was. And a couple other things on Mary Kay too. The pink Cadillac. You tell that story very well. So why don't you share it with our listeners?
The company was doing so well, and she was making so much money. The entire time that she was doing her business, she kept trying to find a gift that would recognize her top sellers. And they did a little pin that had steps on it, and they put jewels going up the steps. And her husband, she read a little article to her husband about why the bumblebee can't fly. It's aerodynamically impossible. And she said, that's like women. So in a few days, he gave, in the mail came a little bumblebee pin. And when she saw that, she said, so for a while, the gift to the top salesman was a jeweled bumblebee pin. But she was never satisfied. She always wanted more and more and more. So one day, unusually, she took a day off and was shopping, and she pulled into the Lincoln dealership. Now, Mary Kay had had a lot of problems in her past with people treating her because she was a woman, not recognizing her business savvy. So she pulled into the Lincoln dealership and told the salesman that she wanted to buy a Lincoln. And he politely told her, well, go home and get your husband and bring him back, and we'll put you in a Lincoln. And she said, thank you very much. He got in the car and went to the Cadillac dealership. And they were not a lot nicer to her. And so when she went in, she said, I want to buy a Cadillac. They said, sure, what do you want? She reached in her purse and opened her purse and said, I want a Cadillac this color, the Mountain Laurel. It was a pink color in her compact. And the guy said, do you realize how much it will cost to have one car painted pink? And you will not be able to return it. She just smiled and said, I'll take the car. And so when the pink car arrived, she picked it up. They were having a sales meeting at her offices. And when she drove in that pink car, her top salespeople were there. And when those ladies saw that pink Cadillac, they just went nuts. Oh my God, where did you get? We've got to. And it hit her then. This is it. This is going to be what I use to motivate. And it worked. I mean, for 50 years, probably 30 years. The Cadillac, General Motors had $138 million worth of Mary Kay Cadillacs on the road. 138 million. And that's back when they didn't cost as much as they do now. So there were a lot of women going after those Cadillacs. And so she would give the top salesman a 2-year lease on a brand new Cadillac, and if you saw one of those, and I've done this myself, driving down the road and see a pink, I thought, oh my God, there's a Mary Kay Cadillac. It was exciting, like seeing the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. It was an exciting thing. And it became a status symbol across the world, not just the United States, but the world. So she didn't stop at that. She continued to motivate. That's just what she did. But I like the Cadillac story myself. And I think about that crazy guy at the Lincoln dealer. He didn't know who he was talking to.
Yeah, well, there's certainly a story there too, right? Never prejudge, right?
There you go.
You never know. It's like you don't know who you're talking to. But yeah, she was something else. I mean, the stories that we still hear about her in the direct selling industry, and of course, a lot of the people who know her are either now retired if they were corporate over there at Mary Kay, or are either elderly or passed away. But I've heard so many Amazing stories. I have a good friend who worked directly for her for a number of years, and some of the stories that he told me about her philanthropy, things that never got publicized. You know, she didn't do them for recognition on her end. She just did them because it was the right thing she felt to do. She took such good care of her people, and that loyalty's still there. I mean, Mary Kay is still an amazing, amazing brand. I had an opportunity a number of years ago. I was an investor in a party plan company. And my friend at Mary Kay said, "Hey, before you do this, because my business in network marketing is very patterned after companies like Herbalife, okay, or Nu Skin or Amway, very, very, very similar to those companies that have been around a long time." So he said, "Yeah, this is a little different. This is like softball and baseball. They're a little different." He said, "So we're kind of more of a party plan company, not so much a multi-level. Why don't you come to the convention? I can't get into the convention, but I can get you into a breakout session." So he gives me the address, a hotel up in Plano. I go up to this thing thinking there's going to be, 50, 75 people there. There's over 1,000 women there and me. I'm the only guy. Okay. And when I'm coming in, the lady at the desk is like, "Are you a rep?" I said, "No, I'm friends with this gentleman. I know it's his name, and his name was Golden over there. I don't want to use it on a video. I don't know why. It probably doesn't matter, but he wouldn't care. But anyway, I use my friend's name, and she's, oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, we got a note that you were coming, and just sit wherever." And I'll tell you what, the energy in that room, unbelievable. And here's the other part. There was not a woman who was not dressed spectacularly, their hair done, obviously their makeup done properly. I mean, it was I've never been at like the Academy Awards or something like that, but I imagine it to be about the same thing where everything was done right. So it was everything that she did, but she also created that Mary Kay style, if you will. Like you could tell a Mary Kay woman in our industry in a second, even if they're not with Mary Kay today. When you talk to them, yeah, you were with Mary Kay at one time, weren't you? And oh yeah, well, I was there, whenever, and they did whatever, be it that they were field or be it that they were corporate. She just had a pizzazz, I guess is the word, or style that is that Mary Kay style that is so unique and professional in the direct selling industry. So I really admired her. But what did we miss, Dennis? I mean, there's so much more we could talk about Mary Kay. I mean,
Well, one of the things about the conventions where she brought in the top motivational speakers in the world to speak to those ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And those are expensive. I mean, it took that cost her a lot of money to bring those people in, but she did everything she could for her distributors. She loved them and they loved her. And she gave them opportunities that didn't exist before her company. And so many of them really appreciate it, and they still do. I mean, like you said, some of the ladies that were there back in those days, and they had so much respect for her, and they should have. She did a lot for women's rights. And back then, it wasn't even a thing, and she did it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing that occurs to me, and I'm not a native Dallas guy. I think you're not either, right? You grew up elsewhere.
Alabama, yeah.
Alabama. But coming here some 30 years ago, and I came here, I'm in the same industry as Mary Kay. So I came here to work for a company here in Dallas. And I'll never forget that first July when literally Mary Kay takes over the city of Dallas. Literally every hotel room, every restaurant, not every restaurant, but most restaurants that you go into have Mary Kay people for about a 4-week period, because the company's so big, they can't do a convention in one place because they, one venue. So they have to do it over about a 4-week period. And, some of, I don't know how they break it up today, but some of it was international. Some of it was Spanish speaking. Some of it was, I guess, North America only, and some of it was global. I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown was, but it was amazing. You would go to the airport and fly somewhere. You had Mary Kay people coming or going. It was just a phenomenal thing. But point being, I say all that to say this: the impact that Mary Kay building a successful brand has on the local economy in one city. City you and I happen to live in, but it could be Salt Lake City, it could be Orlando, it could be any other city where any of the companies in the direct selling industry has such a huge impact on the economy every year here. I mean, the tens of millions of dollars that roll into Dallas at a time of year, by the way, nobody wants to come to Dallas when it's 107, but the Mary Kay women come and they have just a huge impact, and we appreciate them. We want them to come here forever, by the way, but I'm sure you've witnessed some of that conventionese, if you will, that happens here.
Absolutely. You can't miss it.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So Dennis, our next meeting, we're going to talk about somebody else that you and I have great respect for. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in the book are gone, and this gentleman's gone, but that's the great 𝐷𝐒 Mendino, great writer, great.
Oh, wow. I look forward to that. I love to talk about 𝐷𝐒 Mendino. What a wonderful story. And hope everybody will go out and find the book. It's on Amazon, Real Impact Daily Inspiration, or if you want to go to realimpactbook.com, we have specials all the time. It comes in hardcover, softcover, ebook, audiobook, and it makes a wonderful gift. I mean, someone graduating from high school or college, or just someone that you like, you want to give them something that can change their life. It's not a typical inspirational book. It's not meant to be read through and through. It's to be savored and contemplated. And like last night, I went to bed and I had just listened to Bob Proctor earlier in the day, and he was talking about Think and Grow Rich. And I thought, it's been a while. So I put my earphones on and I listened to Think and Grow Rich all night long while I was asleep. I thought, I wonder what that's going to do for me. It's probably going to help. But the book is kind of a Think and Grow Rich. If you like that book, you'll like this one. And in the back of the book, it has a wonderful list of motivational books. So you never run out of motivational books, which happened to me early on. I read several of them and I got addicted, and I wanted them so bad. And where do you get them? There wasn't an internet. There wasn't a Google. I had to really search. And so I kept a list of those really powerful books, and I've kept it for 50 years. So you couldn't pay somebody to read for 50 years and keep a list of only the books that really moved you. I don't know if you've reviewed those or not, but I've had people tell me that's the best part of the book. It's just that list of books you got there. So powerful.
Well, yeah, it's a glossary basically of the who's who of self-development.
It is.
I mean, starting way back. I mean, you got some old titles in there that some people aren't even familiar with, and like there's one that nobody talks a lot about today that and I know, called The Science of Getting Rich by Waddles.
Wallace Waddle.
And people don't know that was the forerunner of Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, and it's just as powerful. But
Yep.
it was written in the 1800s, but it is a powerful book. I love it. I love to read it.
And without all of these books, and of course, As a Man Thinketh, which nobody ever knows what happened to the author of that. Yeah, he just he wrote it and he kind of disappeared. So who knows? It's a mystery.
What's the story about Acres of Diamonds? That's another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of these books, when I was a young man, my Sunday school teacher would give us books like that for Christmas. And I had 4 or 5 of those. As a Man Thinketh, I don't remember. There was 4 or 5 of them, and those are listed in the book too.
Well, they're all biblically appointed. I mean, what was the first great self-development speech, right? The Sermon on the Mount. It kind of started there, and some people got it, some people didn't. So great. So we'll talk about 𝐷𝐒 Mendino next, and looking forward to it. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you.
Likewise.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.